All right, what I have to work with for the meantime, being overseas, I have limited tools, but I think anybody can install this without a shop. But I have my hammer drill. I'm using the DeWalt brushless hammer drill with 20 volts, and I'm using a bit adapter and a Torx 40. You can see some rust on there. I'm trying to treat everything before it gets too bad here in Guam, but we will put that stuff to the test with the salt water being just a mile away. I have the Torx bits. This is what the parts come with in the hook for Amazon. These are the bars that go up the windshield. This one did ship with some scuffing. It's a Jeep, so I'm not as super crazy about the damage in the shipping. It does bother me, but I am, again, way overseas, so we're not going to pursue that right now. I want to get them on the vehicle. It does come with a lot of cutouts for protecting your paint, kind of a padded material, and I believe these are pretty much universally made in China. It did come from the Chinese manufacturer, then it was shipped to Virginia through a warehouse system, and then from Virginia back out to Guam. So there is some shipping damage. They weren't packed that great. They were packed in kind of a loose box, a larger box, and then a smaller box. So this one shipped to the States per the labels on the box, and they threw it in this in Virginia and then shipped it to Guam. So it did make it, but it was really poorly, loosely packed. So it did scuff up the paint on there, and I'm probably going to put some, my wife has a Cricut decal maker, and I'm going to put some stickers over this maybe to cover that up, or try to touch it up with some paint and some bed liner. The other thing is this light bar. Again, an Amazon find. This was bought through, I believe the company marks it. It's the YITAMOTor, and there's a couple of brands that all sell about the same bar, but this was an Amazon Prime recommendation, and it's a $50–$60 bar, and then it also includes the wiring harness for all the lighting included for $56. So my entire setup here is about $150–$160 shipped. There might have been an extra $20 in there because it came to Guam. So basic tools, just a hex wrench, and this is I believe 3/16. If I can see if I can get that, 3/16. And we have the Torx 40, which I've already told you I had. You can also use the drill bit style. This is more of a wrench style with a hammer drill bit attached. And that's going to be basically what we have to install. It's going to be fairly simple. All right, so I took a little bit of liberty with some of this padding because there's no directions, so make it your own, you know. These cutouts are really well made. The backside now is completely wrapped in this kind of vinyl padded material. You kind of feel maybe on the bottom feet of a piece of electronics, or obviously on a much larger scale because of it's almost like putting on sticky paper. But it's nice and padded, velvet. It should protect the paint. We're gonna have to be careful with sun exposure and things like that, because I know these are supposed to protect the paint, but they could also stick to the paint. So I'll have to watch that and maybe apply another coat of wax before I put these on. That's what I would recommend. That way you have some protection against the paint. And then the pads do seem like they're really well cut. They all are perfectly punched for the holes, and this is going to look really nice. Stop. Stop. Alright, so we already put our right side, our passenger side, into the slot. And what I'm doing with the hardware, if you can zoom in there, is I'm using the grip washer in between the bracket that's coming with the light and then the hardware on the outside. This allows me to have enough room to fill this void that they drilled into the light now. It has a lot of room. This also gives me a bracket to free up to add or attach something else to if I want to. And it doesn't look too bad, but in the future we can also change that hardware out if we decide to. Okay, slide this on here. See, it's got some force in there to get these two centered up, but I loosened all the hardware so everything's loose before I tighten everything down. So you want to get the light bar on before you tighten all your hardware. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that little hyperlapse of me trying to finagle the bars on the left and right, kind of go back and forth. One of them I did off camera so that both of them have a bow to the windshield. Now that the light bar is mounted, you will need a few extra washers and some miscellaneous hardware. When you put this together, grab one of those little cases. You always have a few extra things on hand. And then if you need to, you can still mount it. But then you're going to want to go and get yourself the proper hardware, because there were situations where I could have used a bigger washer. It's on there, but I'm going to go back and probably get some stainless steel hardware. I'm going to kind of see how their hardware lasts and see if it rusts, especially here in Guam. It's incredibly salty air. I have a beach a mile away from me, beautiful oceans, beautiful scenery here, but it is hard on the hardware on our vehicles. So on the next step, we're going to go on and then do some of the wiring and teach you about that. Something to consider and have a little bit eye for detail is that when you do mount this bar, I've noticed, and all of these do this, if you look at the trapezoid of how I have it lined up almost like a gun sight down here to here, you can see it's really straight. It's parallel here and here. Your eye can only catch that if you're standing down the side of it. What I want to show you is if you tighten this side and twist it, and you tighten that side and you don't have it twisted, when you come back to look at it, you can see this is way farther in than that side. See how there's no parallel to the trapezoid. So if I just twist this ever so much, ever so slightly, and just have an eye for some of that detail, you can get those to collapse on each other flat, about right there. I mean, you can get that within millimeters. So just something to pay attention to. So you don't want to twist your bar, cause this to warp, or cause this to malfunction, possibly breaking the PCB inside. But it looks amazing. All right, so wiring these lights. I know wiring seems to be an issue for a lot of people. It keeps them kind of from doing things themselves. Maybe not everybody. Everybody's willing to maybe give it a shot sometimes. But in this way, I want to kind of explain what we're doing here. This is a relay, and it does exactly what it says. It relays the voltage. So you see 40 amps at 14 volts. That's what it's rated at. So it can handle that kind of power on the switch side. So you have a switch side, and you have a coil side. And this coil is 85 and 86. And what the coil does is it draws think of it like a water faucet. When you turn a water faucet on, you have a little trickle of water. That is not using a lot of water, right? Well, electricity is the same way. This causes a trickle on whatever device you're pulling it off of. So it could be headlight switch, could be your fog lights, could be some other power device that's in the vehicle, and you don't want to overpower it with too much amperage or too much power traveling through that. So if you turn your faucet up and you have a full flow of water, now you're putting your electrical system under strain on the headlight or the tail lights or whatever you're tapping into. And in this case, we're actually just tapping into a switch in the dash panel so that it's just turned on and off, where this gives you. So we have our wire run through the dash, It comes through here and it pops out right here. So I have it stuck right here next to my cargo inverter, and it's just sticking there right now. It's a simple switch, just turns on and off. Everything's wired for you if you buy it through YITAMOTOR. It's an easy harness to use. It's a cheap way to go about it. It's about $10 or $12 harness, and it includes the switch and everything you need to just run the wire, and it really simplifies the wiring. That way you don't have to know so much about relays and all of the other things that we've installed. So now that I showed you kind of how to run the wire down through the fender and to make the electrical connections at the battery, the red and the black, these are what you have left over. I put wire nuts on there just to kind of protect them from shorting out until I got the light bar installed. And we're going to run this wire up into the fender through there, up through that location. I've chosen that one. It seems to be plenty of room in there. And then feed that through the bar up into the wiring harness here. And then we'll make the electrical connections up there. I'm going to use some solder and some heat shrink. Alright, so you watched me mess around with that for a little while. So we pulled the wire through this perfect little cutout, and I like this wire because it has the extra thick coating on it. Keeps everything protected, waterproof. Reran it through here, and then I used a green wire just to give me a fish to fish it through. I fished down through here and then brought it through here. What took so long was that this little piece of plastic is very difficult to work with and work around. So what I had to do was I had a screwdriver, wrap some electrical tape around it, and just pried this up just ever so slightly, not enough to crack it, but then just enough to room to get me this nice thick heavy protected wire out of there. I'm going to run it up the bar here and use 3M wire holder, and then I'm going to solder it into this, and for now I don't have the right size heat shrink, but I'm going to solder these together and then heat shrink it, and it'll look like one long perfect piece of wire right down the bar. Okay, so what I did up here was I went ahead and put some command strips. For how long these will last, I'm not sure. Everything I do on my Jeep always gets redone sometimes, just to kind of test things out and to see how they work out. Here I want to show you a little bit of a close-up of the, yeah, there we go. So I soldered these together, and you want to get your puddle nice and hot so that when these are butted together, it has to pull into the wire. You should see an action in your puddle of solder. Just holding your solder gun on there and getting this nice and hot will do it. You got to get the wires hot. You don't want to pour the solder onto the tip of the solder iron. That doesn't do anything for you, but I just used a $30 30 watt Craftsman, $15 soldering iron, and it got the puddle plenty hot there on the wire, and then I just started feeding a spool of solder in there. And so the technique is that you take your solder, and as you're holding the tip of the solder on there, you just start feeding it. But your solder should be heating this wire. You shouldn't be feeding this directly onto the solder tip. You need to come into the wire as it's getting hotter and hotter. Feed it a little bit more, because it'll carry the heat through the wire as you give it a little bit more and more. It's not even brazing, it's not even welding, it's just soldering. So just feed the solder onto the material. It'll get nice and hot, and you'll get a really good contact here. It'll feed into both wires, and then give you a really solid connection. I'm going to go ahead and tape these up. Alright, so here it is, the final touches on the JT light bar. I think it really adds a nice touch to the aesthetics of the Jeep. Makes it look nice and tall with the bar, giving it a little bit of draw your eye up the top of the Jeep. Not always about the aesthetics, but it does look cool kind of going down the road with a big light bar on it. But go ahead, kiddo. Go ahead and hit the switch. Nice and bright. It's kind of hard to tell in the daylight. I'll have to do this again at night. And then go ahead and turn the headlights on. Still got them halogen lights in there, but I think that is, kind of see it pans off. The light gets dimmer as you come off the Jeep about 45 degrees. And my wife's trying to stay out of the shot. But you can see how the light kind of draws more towards a spot. You can see it really brightens up right here. So I think it's more of a spot. I mean, for 50 bucks, you can't beat it. I know even the cheaper lights on Guam with the 52-inch bar are in the hundreds of dollars. So I really got a good deal on this through Amazon. USPS shipped, and it came out all right. The wiring turned out well. He shrunk that up, and it's all black, and then just using command strips. I'm not sure how these will last in the sun. We'll give them a shot. If they come off, they'll come off clean on the glass, and then I'll just put something else on there and reattach another way. But it comes out of there, no holes drilled. Everything is nice and clean, so it's not going to cause anything to rust. And we'll see about this hardware, see how long this hardware lasts. But the silver hardware, I'm hoping it's stainless steel, but we'll see. If not, we'll just switch it out. Easy enough. But easy to do. Thanks guys for watching the video. We'll see you on the next one.